you got the headsets and the whole technology suitcase. If you got that or not.
I see a few familiar names right there.
Me and Dave put a technology laptop or suitcase in the virtual reality thing.
Yeah, and as it goes along here, we'll be adding more classes and more people will start doing it. Like my coming in here was kind of this is really working out nice because I probably wouldn't have done this.
Yeah.
You know, and it's great it's all set up in here and it's, you know, it's a neat deal. Like I said, I'm new at this, just like you guys are, you know, and like I said, we'll look forward to having you back on campus and in my cool room. And when I'm teaching in there, my room's really cool, in case you didn't know. And
a lot of flags.
A lot of flags. Yeah. I had my students vote on that, by the way.
Yeah.
I thought it might have been too much.
That's
and they voted, and they said, keep the flag. So, yeah, my room is really nice space, and the whole campus up here is really nice. So I know a lot of you are brand new, and it's a weird way to start. You know, it's a different way to start.
It's a great way to start, though. I mean,
technology guy.
I'm telling you, you guys are hitting the ground running from go in one of the strangest. I mean, nobody's ever had to operate this way before, so it's kind of cool that way because we're really finding our way together, and I think at the end of the year it's going to be amazing to hear like the feedback and everything from students and from staff and faculty, and come out with sort of a way that, you know, I forget which football team it was, but there was one where that basically they gave all the new players a book, and it was just called the team's way, right? And that's sort of what we're developing is just sort of the Red Lake Nation College way, you know, of how we work with technology and what we use and what works for our students and, you know, where their strengths and their comforts are. And it's really just, I mean, you couldn't ask for a better blank slate to start a school year with.
Yeah, it's interesting as a faculty member here because I'm kind of old school in my classes, but it's the way we've set it up. I've had to modify how I'm doing in my other classes. This class is a little bit different. Like I said, this is a kind of a wide range of topics, and I'm not going to give you a whole bunch of huge tests and stuff like that in here. But in some of my other classes, it's changed the way I've tested because students are away. Basically, it's open book on my exams in the other classes, and then instead of, you know, where if it was in class, I might have asked a question on a certain slide that was, you know, what about this? And it was just kind of spitting back the information. Well, now you have access to not only my PowerPoints in my class, you have access to the entire internet, and you have 3 days to do the exam. So students can look stuff up, but the danger is the simplicity of being able to plagiarize is an issue that faculty deal with here. And you know, I catch it. I can take something you've written out there, and I can take a little piece of it, stick it in Google, and it spits back where it came from. And I'm like, are you serious? You know, I've had some students on one of the tests in my class, you know, they gave me the Wikipedia answer, word for word on Wikipedia. I'm like, well, then you get a 0, you know. But it's learning what plagiarism is and being clear on that kind of stuff. But it's, yeah, the technology is amazing, and like I said, it's really a learning process for all of us.
Yeah, that's really the best place to be because that's what we're in school for.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So it's, yeah. I had a question about the ethics. Getting into ethics a little bit. I went up to BSU a couple years ago, and they were talking about the development of drones.
Mm-hmm.
And they said the ability of drones they used to just fly around, and they were like a camera in the sky, and they would look and they would see something, and then somebody would make a decision to take that out, and they would fire a missile in and hit a target. And they said what happened, they said, which was interesting, and they found the instructor doing this pretty disturbing, was the decision to put bombs on drones was not made by the military. It was made by the developer of weapons. So they just came and they said, hey, how'd you like it if we put a missile on this drone and you could fire the missile? And they said, oh, okay, yeah, we'll buy that. And they said there was no process involved in determining the ethics of it. And it gets into other things like, you know, is it morally all right for you to send in a robot army if we can produce 1,000 robots that have machine guns and laser guns and stuff in to take out ISIS? Is that okay or not? I'm just curious your thoughts on that.
Well, it's interesting. You started saying that. I pulled up the Isaac Asimov's 3 laws of robotics. This is still, you know, Isaac Asimov was the science fiction writer. I, Robot, that movie is you know, pretty much kind of an exploration of this. But his 3 rules are: a robot may not injure a human being or through inaction allow a human being to come to harm. A robot must obey orders given it by human beings, except where such orders would conflict with the first law. And 3, a robot must protect its own existence as long as such protection does not conflict with the first or second law. Now, these are not actually codified laws that are in place anywhere. Otherwise, we wouldn't have armed drones, because that is a robot that hurts people, right? Mm-hmm. So, when it comes to the ethics of technology, you are literally at the mercy of the developer, right? Google, their whole thing is don't be evil. They literally have this as their thing, don't be evil. What does that mean? Like, that doesn't actually tell me anything, and it doesn't, you know, I mean, it guides them somewhat. But at the same time, if Google wanted to take all of my information and do whatever with it, I don't really have a leg to stand on, because at the beginning of everything, you sign a little consent saying, you know, I agree that my information and blah, 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 and you sign off, and that's it. The problem with that is that you are basically making, you know, an agreement on the faith of the provider of the technology at that point. And in a court of law, I'm pretty sure it would hold up, so you don't have to worry about that. But the idea of the developer says this is how this is going to work, and they do X, Y, or Z. And so you can choose who you support and who you don't support based on that. Just like you would, you know, if Pepsi tested on animals, I probably would stop drinking Pepsi, right? Maybe not Mountain Dew, but definitely Pepsi. It's the idea, though, of that you know, you want to support and reward good behavior, just like in environmental, you know, issues. Basically, the ones that are behaving as better stewards of our environment, we tend to support better. So there's that, but there's also this other thing, that there's this idea that people have that they can't do this stuff, that it's just, you know, it's too complicated and it's out there. And that's garbage. Like, that is complete garbage. Like, everyone in this meeting and in this room knows just as much about computers as I do, right? Like, anybody, if they sit and they pick at it and they watch enough YouTube videos and they read enough things online, they can solve whatever technological problem they've got. They may not have the means of manufacturing. They may not be able to take silicone and turn it into a circuit board, but they can contract with people who can. And so the idea now has been, and you see it in YouTube and you see it in the maker community, is, and like what we've made here with this monster of a 3D video shooting machine, is that people are starting to become their own creators, and people are starting to become their own producers, and they produce their own content. And with that gives them a certain freedom to be able to decide their own ethics. And I believe that ultimately, like, we are responsible to contribute to the greater good when it comes to technology, but we can empower ourselves and have a greater say in that by developing our own tools and our own methods and our own processes for how we work with this stuff.
Got a question. Have any of you out there done anything like YouTube videos or produced anything? I'm just curious, any of the students.
haven't.
No, I haven't either.
Yeah, it's something that, you'll probably be doing, I would guess, in a lot of your classes coming up. In my geography class, we'll be doing, if anybody's in there, I can't remember. We do an interview of somebody, and then we submit it as an audio file into the class. And we're going to do that. It's like 5 to 10 minutes. So it's not really advanced with like a, 3D camera thing, but it's that use of technology and being able to have things like that we're starting to do. Another question I had, getting back on the ethics about kind of how it's driven by, you had started off with the military.
Mm-hmm.
I'm always wondering about, like you said, who restrains it at all? Who restrains the technology? Because I always think, what would happen if North Korea dropped a bomb and took out San Francisco? And then you went to you have these companies come to the military and say something like, hey, we have the technology to send in drones or whatever and kill everything that moves in that country. It's not, I always think technology is easy when things are going pretty well, but when you get in a situation like that, where's the restraint? Where does the restraint? Because I keep hearing Trump this last week was saying, we got weapons you wouldn't believe. I'm not going to tell you what they are, but they're beyond your imagination what we can do to everybody. And you're like, whoa, that doesn't sound good.
Well, that's, that really is sort of the place where we as consumers have the most power. Like, by educating ourselves and empowering ourselves in these sorts of things, we'll be able to, the danger is this, that everything turns into push-button computing, that people don't understand at all, so that they have no frame of reference when there's an actual time and need. Like, one of the things that Apple has done with their iPhones, which are very convenient, is they've made it so that all I have to do, if I want to know how to get to Cleveland, is I push a button, and then I type in Cleveland, and it will give me directions to Cleveland. I don't have to think anymore. I just go with the flow, right? And that's the problem, is that, like, what we were saying before, I don't know if everybody was in the class before we started, but what we were saying was that, like, technology is great, but it has a tendency to be too smart, right? That if we rely on it for everything, if we can't rely on ourselves to do paper and pencil, to think for ourselves, like, then that's taking it, that's letting it drive. And if we let it drive, then it's susceptible to the ethics. Like, as long as there has been people on this planet, there have been shady people doing shady stuff with whatever was available. Because technology at one point was rocks and sticks,
Mm-hmm.
and now it's, rocket ships to Mars. Like, that's how it's progressed. The idea, though, is that the more the person educates themselves and the more competent and capable they are in technology, the harder it is for bad actors to really be able to do a whole lot, because there'll be people that will be like, no, here's another solution. You don't have to go in and wipe out an entire country. You can, like what we've done before, you can shut off their internet. We literally went in and shut off their internet when they were messing around with Sony pictures. We went in and we just cut out the internet to the country. And then
Where
we
was
sat
that?
there.
Where was that?
That was in North Korea.
Oh, I know North Korea.
There was a movie that was coming out that North Korea didn't like, so they hacked Paramount Pictures, I believe it was, and Seth Rogen and James.
Yeah, I watched
Franco.
it about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, okay. Well, that movie, they hacked into a bunch of things, and instead of a physical retaliation, we just shut off the internet. And we were like, what are you going to do about it? And, yes, now they, have the weird little skirmish between the two leaders and all of that. But what was really amazing at that time was just the fact that, like, that was the first time that I think some people realized, oh, there are other alternatives. And, being another alternative, finding other alternatives, the smarter we are, the more educated and capable we are, the more options we have. And the more options we have, there's a better chance of getting the right one, or at least one that's more beneficial to everybody. Because launching weapons at a point like that would have been, over a Seth Rogen movie, would have been really dumb.
Mm-hmm. Anybody out there have a question? Anything on technology that you've wondered about at all? Or anything at all? Can be off the topic we're talking about. Any questions? Somebody, please.
I did have a question about the headsets we were given.
Sure.
And it's probably a stupid question. I'm sure we've been told it before, but you, maybe you can confirm this. We can use those to plug in and virtually be in the classroom whenever someone's teaching. Correct?
Well, it would depend. If we're broadcasting like what we've got with Tom's class going right now, yes. You can use the headset to access, like if you download the Firefox Reality app, that browser, you can most likely join a Google Meet and join that way. You can of course access Canvas, and there's different options like that. And over time, we're building it out so that like in a class like this, you could join and be in here near real time. Right now, you could put on your headset, go to YouTube VR, and you'd experience like about a 30-second delay, because that's actually how we set this up, so that you could, go and check it out if you wanted to.
Yeah, not all the classes are set up yet for it. It'll expand.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like right now, a lot of our stuff is, welcoming people aboard and developing that way. But throughout the course of the year, you'll see more and more content, more and more class content after the fact available. So that, yeah, in a case like this, I know that I'm not really providing a whole lot of great information, but if someone was in here and they were, you could go back afterwards and be like, I forget what that person said, and then you go in and you could literally be sitting in here and I'd be talking to you one-to-one, because the camera is in here recording it. So there's a bunch of different ways, and we're building it out every day.
Yeah, the big thing is to learn how to use that stuff. Even on your own, to go use your headsets in other websites and learn how to do it. I'll be honest, I don't know anything about it. And that's something time-wise for me, kind of limited on time to learn this stuff, but I'm going to be spending time learning about it and then seeing all the things you can do with it. What are some things you can do with your headsets, and if you're not just using them for class? Headsets
were also one of the other things that really has driven a lot of tech development, has been gaming, video games. Video games are a ever-increasing market, and there are some really interesting ones that they've put in Oculus. You can be using it to create. There's a program in there called Quill, where you can paint in 3 dimensions, or you can paint, in 2 dimensions. It's those sorts of, creative expression type things. There's also apps where you can browse art museums and things like that.
That sounds cool.
Yeah, there's one that they made, and it's called the Vincent Van Gogh experience, where you literally can walk through his paintings. So
that sounds like something I would do.
That's the thing. Though there's the best part about all of this is that we're at such the beginning of this, new tech. Like I said, there are people that wish they had gotten involved in the internet when it first came out. There's people that wish that they had gotten into app development when it first came out. Well, we're getting into virtual reality when it first came out. Mm-hmm. Or when it started to hit its stride.
So no one here.
So.
Yeah, I watched an interview with Bill Gates not that long ago, and his thing was it's artificial intelligence is the future. He was just really kind of emphasizing how we are just beginning to get into artificial intelligence. That's where a lot of the kind of money and a lot of research is being done on that right now.
he's right to a certain point, but you got to remember that a computer is like the most it's like the smartest, dumbest person you know. You know, great example, I worked in tech support, and there was a program that was automated to send emails. But this person that was getting the email had an out-of-office reply, so it would automatically reply to anyone who emailed him that he was out of office for the next week and blah, blah, blah. Well, the email that was being sent to him had a do not reply message attached to it. So it literally shut down the entire company for 36 hours while his email and our server just were going back and forth saying, you know, I'm out of office, do not reply. I'm out of office, do not reply. It did it for 36 hours and taxed out the servers so much that everything just broke. And that's a computer. That's your artificial intelligence. Like, there will never be, and I would say this with 100% confidence, there will never be anything that compares with the human brain. Because there's just certain common sense things that we pick up on that the computer can't, because it's built on mathematical logic. And as much as you want to make that fuzzy, it's still a machine. We're always going to be needed in terms of our thinking ability.
Yeah, I'm like some of you out there may not know a lot about this. Tell me about, I keep hearing about 5G and the 5G revolution coming. What's that all about?
Well, it's the next level of network, and then you'll have 6G, and then you'll have 7G. It's just the new protocol. I won't use terminology. It's just the new, like, back and forth of how a network works and the way that it's sent out so that you'll be able to pick it up better. It's just new, tweaked, improved.
Is it the speed is the biggest thing?
Speed is the biggest thing. Speed and the packets that contain the data, like that you're able to send more at one time. And by one time, I mean like one nano microsecond. You know, like incredibly small amount of time, incredibly large amount of data. And each time that we go through these iterations and, you know, processing and transmission power increases and the sizes of the devices and the components become smaller, it just gets to a point where there's just like a new framework, and it's the latest framework.
Yeah, I had read about 5G, and they said one of the things I thought was kind of interesting. They said, and they've already done this, I've heard, is that they'd have a setup if you needed surgery. Let's say you needed surgery, and it was a tricky heart operation, that they could put you in a thing, lay you down, and they can have a surgeon who's in Los Angeles, who's putting on like this robotic hand stuff and going in real time, because the 5G is so fast that they can do surgery from Los Angeles on your heart in Red Lake in the future. You know, something like that. I mean, is that kind of like the dream of...
It's not my dream.
Not your dream?
I mean, honestly, if you turn out the lights, then what happens? You know, so it's like, it's that sort of thing. You know, I think it's great if we can't, it gets back to, I don't know if you've seen Jurassic Park, the #1 Jurassic Park, and it's my favorite thing in there, is he says, y'all have been worried so much about what you can do that you never stop to think about whether you should.
Yeah.
And that's sort of the thing in that sort of stuff. Like, yes, you can do that to a certain extent, and yeah, there'll be robots that can do that. I like it more from the communication standpoint, right? That I can communicate with you here in person, I can communicate with your class can see me, and your class also gets a record of me, like as if they were sitting right here in near real time and later access. Like, I think that's great. I don't want anyone in this room operating on my heart. Sorry, Kevin. But it's like those sorts of things, like, you know, I really want things to develop and improve and get better resolution and get better sound and be able to figure out certain problems and be able to travel at the speed of light. Like, that's great. But when it comes to certain things that seem to work okay, I don't have any problem, you know, if there's no way to get a heart surgeon here and that's the only way, then okay, let's take a look at it. But with each use case, you really do have to ask yourself, should we do this? Is there a real need? And why? What's being made better by doing it this way than by improving the traditional doc cuts you open and does the heart?
Yeah, and then you look at the costs too. As opposed to, do you develop this thing where they can do it remotely, or do you train another heart surgeon who could actually be here?
That's the thing. When you look at the cost, you also have to look at that component of the cost of, I don't care if it costs $100,000 to bring a doctor here. I like having a doctor here. I think that's a good thing, but like, if they're saying that, well, we can do this heart surgery thing because it only costs us $5 to have a robot do it, I don't think that's a good reason to do it. I think that at that point, even though that costs $5, that should have no bearing on the fact that it costs $100,000 to have a doctor. Like, there's certain areas where I just think that you have to use common sense and like not give up something because you go, oh, it's so much cheaper.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, we're using this technology in the classroom here. Do you think that higher education, and it's been not forced on us, but it's out of necessity because of coronavirus now, but do you think higher ed will be one of the main drivers of this technology, like when this pandemic ends, or do you think it's really going to be kind of like, all right, we're back to normal?
I was really surprised that it wasn't. Like, I was really surprised that when this hit, we gave a presentation to a group of IT directors, and none of them were moving in this direction. And it really just, I was really amazed that I was like, guys, your fall semester starts in 3 months. Like, what's your plan? And their plan was just sort of, well, we're just going to deal with it. And it's like, no, why don't you try something? Like, in this particular case, I think that people like us, like our school, literally get to be the example of somebody that's on the forefront of it, which is really amazing when you think about it. There aren't a whole lot of opportunities like this. On the other hand, I think that when this ends, when COVID-19 ends, you're going to start seeing, a lot of people are going to be refreshed to go back and be in a room full of people and all of that. I know I will.
Mm-hmm.
But I also think that there's going to be a group of people that found that they actually like if you use the Twitch app or Discord or one of those, conferencing type apps or software communities, you'll see that there's a lot of people that do prefer that format. And so I think that when the wave rolls back, what you're going to see is that the methods that get worked out during this time will still be with us and still be used to a certain extent. One of the things that it did do in this HLC visit was it cut back on the cost for travel, right? They didn't have to put people on planes to send them here, and so, or put them up in a hotel or anything like that. And so you start looking at some of the trade-offs there, and I think that you'll see some sort of remote visitation occurring with that,
I can see it really, being a tool even here, because I think, well, what if we came back in January, if we're back on campus, and then it's minus 42 degrees, and you guys are sitting at home.
Oh, I'd much rather do this on a snow day.
There you go.
Yeah.
So you could sit there instead of coming up to campus when it's minus 60 wind chill, and I anticipate that's probably what we'll do, instead of, we've already developed like e-plans for when it gets really cold. Doesn't mean class is just canceled, that we're not doing anything. And all of us have gotten more comfortable doing what we're doing right now. I didn't know anything about Google Meets before, and now I'm getting more and more comfortable with it, that this is how we'd meet, is just like this in the winter. And I'm sure a lot of you are like, yeah, that'd be great to stay inside it instead of trying to dig out your driveways and trying to get over here.
It will force us to look at some of the ways that we did things in the past and say, why didn't we do it that way?
Mm-hmm.
When we had these other options. So you'll see that happen too.
Any questions? Anything coming up with anybody?
No, I always, with the pandemic, like how everything, I think of like the Jetsons come to mind, like how we're doing it over the phone, other than flying around in a car, are, you know, I mean, that's what I literally think. I don't know if I age myself when I talk about the Jetsons, you know? And then with technology, I don't know if you remember that SNL, if you remember that SNL skit where Will Ferrell had that cell phone. Remember, he's all, here, let me take my phone. He's on his finger and, you know, he tries to open it. You know how technology was getting so small. And then we go the other way where it's getting big, you know, like the iPhone Max, you know, where I got carpal tunnel. I can't have that big phone. You know what I mean? It's just how we went to small, or how Motorola is going to have a flip phone again. You know?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it is interesting, and it's so much of it's marketing.
The Razor's coming back. So is the Katana and all. Yeah.
Yeah, I pulled out of my basement a Kin phone
Yeah.
that looked like a hockey puck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if you remember those. So, I don't know. Did anybody have one of those out there? It was a round phone.
If you go to eBay and you go to vintage electronics, it's amazing.
I like that cheeseburger.
Yeah, cheeseburger phone. It's amazing how much stuff has changed over the years. Like, and not that far, like 10 years ago, you know, some of this stuff was around and you're like, oh, I remember that. Where did that go? It just disappeared.
Yeah, just for information, I have a 1977 Quasar TV in my office with Sunshine Yellow,
That's
which is
beautiful TV.
which is in my office. So I like the old stuff too. So we're almost done here. Any final questions at all?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So how do I what app do I download on a virtual thing to be able to be in class virtually?
Okay, the best way to answer that is that there's no app. There are apps to collaborate with your class, and then there's apps where like you can review your class after the fact, like in this one, but the class has to have opted in and it has to, you know, have been developed. So you want to get the 3 apps that you want to get are Firefox Reality, which is basically a Firefox browser in virtual reality. You want to get Spatial, which is basically a collaboration space, and you want to get YouTube VR. Those are the 3 that you absolutely need. And then there's also one called Immersed, IMMERSED, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the coming weeks. But it's basically a way that you could work on your desktop or your laptop, but inside the virtual reality headset. But we're going to build into there. For right now, the best place to have things is in YouTube VR, because that's where we can put logs of the classes that we recorded. And it's also where we're going to have Michelle Graves is going to do some cultural demonstrations for her class. And also, when we do the haunted house in October, we're going to have a virtual reality one as well.
I didn't even know that.
Yes. Yeah. In fact, I will be talking with you about that here in a couple weeks, because I saw your costume yesterday.
Anybody up here last year for Halloween? I was a giant baby. If anybody was up here, so.
You rocked that last year. But yeah, at this point, in terms of meeting with your class, you still want to stay in Google Meet. And in classes that have a 360 VR video attached, I dropped in the chat box the link, and that's what I'll do one last time here in this. So if you want to access this class from your headset, you can either type in this link, or just go to YouTube VR and subscribe to the Medwega Noonan Library channel. And that's really, those are your best options right now.
Any other questions? Like I said, we're still developing